Welcome to episode 15 of Soar and Pair, Why Not Together?
Hey.
We're excited to be with you all this week, and it's been a great week. We are going to talk today about, we're going to focus more on our relationship and how we support each other, both with our struggles and, you know, how we help lift each other through difficult times. Yeah. And the struggles that are there, because we don't claim to have a perfect relationship, you know, so it is what it is. But let's talk a little bit about this last week. You know, it's been a good week, and we'll talk a little bit about the struggles, but the one thing I do want to update with my music is that I did download recently on my YouTube channel an original song, Love and Forgiveness, and performed it with my friend Anthony Keys, Tony Keys, and myself.
Yeah.
And I really thought the lyrics were very timely right now.
I agree. Yeah.
You know, in fact, my sister Gigi commented on it as well.
Oh,
which,
did she?
yeah, so it was really, really
see
nice.
that, yeah.
She said that it was timely lyrics. I think at the beginning of the second verse it says, "In a world where differences divide, go down the river of peace."
Beautiful.
Yes, and there's other lyrics I can't think of. I wrote the words and I can't think of them right now.
You never can. But
it says
it
this.
makes me laugh.
Blank.
He forgets his own lyrics. But I love listening to you and Tony together. They do such a beautiful job. You guys harmonize beautifully, and it's a great mix listening to the two of you.
Yeah, and it's great when you vibe with somebody as a musician, and I think musicians will understand there's just some people that you just perform with, and he and I performed for many years over at our little church that we met through, and there would be times where we would change something and just go with it. And people would be like, wow, and it's never perfect, but it's always a lot of fun when we just sort of ride the...
Well, and you guys do a great job of, if somebody gets lost, the other one picks it up, and you guys can do it seamlessly. People don't usually catch it.
Yeah. So he's
really neat.
I think it's a great compliment to the songwriter when somebody else wants to perform the music too. I mean, I don't mind doing it, but it's nice to hear others do it.
I imagine it is. That's a huge compliment.
It really, really is. So, thank you, Mr. Keys, if you're listening. Appreciate that very much, and continue to crank out songs. I have written, I don't know if people realize, over 50 original songs.
I haven't counted them up.
So that is why I forget the lyrics. That's a lot to remember.
I'll give him a break.
But over the years, the last little over 20 years, you know, songs come to me during my life experience, you know, just like when I broke my ankle 8 days or 9 days after the surgery, I wrote Broken Dreams, which is also on the YouTube channel. So, you know, when we first fell in love, I wrote music about that. I wrote, you know, so it's really about, and I think this is true whether it's a painter, a sculptor, a musician, it's about expressing those life experiences.
When your heart is full.
Right.
It just kind of comes out.
It really does. You know, when the whole lockdown happened and we were opening our doors to the neighborhood and performing, that's when Friendship Call came. So it's just great as an artist to have that outlet and express it, and then have people enjoy it.
Well, and explain to them how you come up with things, how you just kind of dip in. I think that's such a beautiful visual. Yeah,
it is. Because I was born with just the ability to put notes together almost as easily as people put words together. I've always described it, when the time is right for a song, it's like I can just dip into this ocean of notes and pull out this beautiful pattern of notes that just sort of turn into this expression that's in my heart at the moment, or whatever is on my mind, or however it needs to come through me.
I love that visual. I can just see you dipping down and all these notes coming up.
Yes. and riding the wave. So
there's something for you to paint, Tony. Yeah.
Yes, he's a great painter
That
too.
would be great. That would be really cool.
Yeah, I may talk to him about that. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that. So continued updates with that. Well, how about you? Anything you wanna express about this last week for you and what you're pursuing?
With me, I've started my medical intuitive class, and I'm taking this class with Candace Parisi, and she's awesome. She is awesome. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the class, and I'm just keep on keeping on.
Right.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot and learning a lot about myself through the process. So it's beautiful. I'm enjoying it.
It is. I see how it's affecting you, and it's actually pretty amazing.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
Right. It
Yes,
is.
really, I swear. Yeah, it's interesting because as I go through the process, it really causes you to go deep, and I find myself going through a variety of emotions. From, I'll get a little snarky or edgy or whatever, and then I get emotional. And it's just, I'm trying to be gentle with myself right now as I go through this, because it's the growth process. And growth, as we know, and change is just never easy. It's never seamless and pretty. It can be messy and difficult, but it's so worth it.
It's always worth it. The uncomfortableness of breaking out of those patterns and
the willingness to stretch out. Exactly. Right. Yeah. The willingness to step outside your old patterns and bad habits sometimes, and just find a new way and continue to grow. I never want to stop growing.
Right. I think that's something we have in common, and it's why we're doing this podcast.
Very much.
Why why not together? Why not ... together? And the reason I like that is because whatever that you fill in the blank, even if it's a personal thing you're going through, it's something that we look at together, which really brings us to our theme. And how do we support each other? Speaking of what you're talking about, how do we support each other when one of us is really struggling? I will say, and I will admit that the job I've taken on now for over a month, which is a senior manager position over unemployment operations in Arizona, has been professionally by far the biggest challenge of my career over 30 years. And honestly, you've seen me. You've seen the pressure and the stress on me.
I have, and it's new. It's different for me to see. I'm not used to seeing you come home looking beat up every day.
Right.
That heaviness on your shoulders or the tired in your eyes is just new.
Right. And I think inadvertently, without me intending to, is I think what ends up happening when you're closest with somebody is that you end up taking or dumping that stress on them.
It's always the people closest to us, right?
Right. And so the dumper would be me, the dumpy would be you.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah. I've had to remind him, you're not at work.
I know. And, truth be told, I don't necessarily see it. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm innocent. I think we all do that, though, in our relationship. It's like, no, I didn't mean that.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't help, too, that I'm going through my own thing over here. You're going through your thing over there, and then we've got what we're going through together, and so we're bound to bounce off each other, clash once in a while,
Right. And so I think in our relationship, what we've learned over the years, in our 9+ years together, is how to really do that dance of supporting each other.
Yes.
Not taking things personally when the other person is struggling, and occasionally lashes out.
Yeah.
You know, so, let me go back to the past for a minute. When we first got together and, we switched from being brother and sister-in-law
Yeah.
to significant others that were living together and loving each other, and we had all that coming at us. Boy, oh boy, we had to learn how to support each other.
Quickly.
Yes.
Really quickly, we did. Yeah, because there was a lot going on at that time. Yeah.
Yeah, there really was, and the other thing that I think me adapting to you, because your past was very different from mine.
Very.
You were an 80s rocker girl, if I could just paint a picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. White Snake and Poison and what else am I thinking? Dokken and all those bands.
Yeah.
Rush. And I was a classically trained pianist in a Mormon family kid.
Yeah, very different backgrounds.
So extremely different.
Yeah.
I'd never inhaled anything. And I'm not going to say you inhaled everything, but
thank you.
But you did dabble.
I did. And I had my time.
And I see.
Didn't stay there.
And which is an interesting thing with the statement "opposites attract." In that way.
I would agree with that completely.
Yeah. How did that play out for us? Because with our different backgrounds.
I think we're alike where it matters. And so as long as somebody has that foundation, our foundation is strong. So we have enough in common. I think we approach things so similarly and we see things similarly.
Right.
And our values are so spot on to each other that the differences to me is what makes it interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to be, we're so much alike anyway, that if everything was too similar, it could get boring.
I did take her to a symphony a couple times.
He did.
And she behaved.
I didn't want to. I really wanted to do something.
And she really tried. She's like, I closed my eyes and I really enjoyed the sound. And you were being sincere, but at the same time, I'm thinking, yeah, this is not the same as the Journey Def Leppard concert we went to, where you had a couple beers in your hand and you were singing
dancing
at the top of your lungs.
Get up here!
I really enjoyed that too, but it was different for me because I didn't grow up going to those kind of concerts.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I didn't go to the symphony, so.
Right.
Yeah, I have to admit, I love you, but it's still not my favorite.
Well, at least I didn't drive you to an opera with
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, Tony may want to go.
There you go. No, but getting, so I mean, when we first got together and we had different backgrounds, I think there was an adjustment for me. I'll just be honest, there was an adjustment for me going, you know what, I'm with somebody that has had a whole lifetime of experience and I know very little about. I know that sounds funny because we were brother and sister-in-law, but we really didn't know each other very well, very isolated. Not. So it was a challenge for me to get past that. Do you remember that? I really had a hard time,
getting past.
Yeah.
What exactly? What do you mean?
The differences. I mean, I had always grown up to be with somebody who was just like me. So I think what was interesting for me is to just go completely off script, off-roading as you like to say.
Right.
And, not that, oh my gosh, I'm with, but somebody who grew up as a rebel, okay?
I did.
And this very straight-laced person.
Yeah.
I think it was just an interesting adjustment. Not that you were being rebellious at that time anymore or what have you, but you just had a different
outlook.
Yes.
Yeah, a different experience. Absolutely. Yeah, I do remember that. And I remember telling you to relax and just enjoy. you know,
Right.
to just enjoy yourself, because the one thing about you is that you've always wanted to, you've got an adventure spirit about you, and so you're always willing to explore and find new things. And
Right.
so as long as it doesn't compromise your ethics, I think you're open to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Another time I'm thinking of for myself when I really, really struggled and you were there to support me, and then I'll let you maybe talk about a time or two if you want.
Okay.
Was 5 years ago. You and I went to Hollywood,
Mm-hmm.
and the American Songwriters, Composers, Producers Associations, called ASCAP,
Mm-hmm.
has an annual get together with high level artists, individuals like Richard Marx and other famous people are there, and songwriters, and there's about 1,000, 1,200 people, and it was a week long.
Yeah.
And here I am, 50 years old, never been to anything like this, and thinking, oh wow, I'm gonna meet somebody, and somebody's gonna hear one of my songs, and this is gonna be my break. And I went there, and I looked around the room and saw 1,000 other people with the same thought, and I felt lost, and I got emotional, and I doubted myself.
Mm-hmm.
You had to pick up the pieces, because I was just this blubbering child.
Well, and if you do you remember what I did when we left there? Before we left
Right.
the city, I grabbed that flyer and I said, "We're going to this."
Yes.
I knew you needed. We went to a audition, and I knew he needed that. I didn't want you to walk away without that in your pocket. You needed to get back on the horse.
Right, and that was so huge for me, because they took my picture, asked me where I was from, and then I performed an original song, "What Are You Waiting For?" in front of these producers and everything. And the guy that was sitting out in the lobby had been hearing artists come all day long.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got past my nerves, I performed. They clapped afterwards, and I thought they were just being nice, and they said some good things and about the song. I really liked it. And when I walked out, the guy Larry said to you and me, "That's the first time all day they've clapped."
Mm-hmm. If you remember, the guy that was sitting there with the clipboard
Mm-hmm.
in the audition, he kept asking. In fact, he looked at me. He actually asked me while you were playing. He said, "Did he write this?" And I said, "Yes." And then he looked at me again. He said, "He wrote this." And I said, "Yes, yes, it's his." So yeah.
That was a great
was
affirmation. So I mean, I really left there on a higher note, even though, and I made a couple connections. Nothing really came of them. But what came of that, because my point is when I was in a very low point, it's like day 3, we paid a lot of money to go there, and I was feeling very gutted,
beat up,
very lost, thinking, what am I even doing? All these young kids, here I am, with a lot of gray hairs, a classical background, hoping beyond hope, feeling desperate and feeling the emotion of that desperation, and yet you listened, like the friend that you are, and you gave me that up. I know one other thing that I remember too. They had some keyboards out there, some companies. You're like, why don't you sit down and play something? And so I did, and a couple people watched, and so by forcing me to get past that wall of emotion, the fear of failure, or the desperation of trying to get noticed in an industry that isn't easy
right
to break into.
Well, and what I remember too is you, in spite of what did or didn't happen in that experience, you made some great connections, and you got to speak to like Richard Marx and these people. You got some great advice from them.
Right.
It wasn't a loss.
No.
It just wasn't the ticker tape that you had anticipated
Right.
and wanted.
Wasn't
right?
the breakthrough, and you kind of helped me get past that and not get discouraged and continue to,
Awesome.
work on my craft. So I thank you for that, and that kind of support. What I think is, helpful with somebody in a relationship who allows you, gives you a safe space to be vulnerable and to really express
Mm-hmm.
the fears that you're having,
Mm-hmm.
and then not be judged for it,
Mm-hmm.
and not used against you in one way or the other,
Yeah.
or not turn into like, yeah, you should just give this up. It's just really.
Oh God, no! I would never say that to you. You've got so much talent. No, I would never say that to you. You need to always pursue your dreams.
Well, exactly, and my point is, 5 years later, we haven't gone back for various reasons. I may try it again, but I'm, writing, excited more than ever to keep, sharing and exploring those options and doing. I've done several concerts since then, written several, both vocal and instrumental, published 2 CDs. So, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for helping me through that. And being that kind of support,
I'm happy to be.
Right.
It's cool. It's cool to watch how much you've grown in the time that we've been together. I can't speak to before, but in just the time that we've been together, I've seen you relax into who you are and just kind of fly with it. However, you've become more fluid.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I have too. I think we've done that for each other.
Right.
Where we've, instead of the expectation, we've become more fluid and just go with the flow because we have that support of each other.
Right. And by contrast, in the past relationship that I was in, not only was there not any support, but there was always this fear of stepping outside
Right.
the line. There was
Getting in trouble,
Mhm.
so to speak.
I think you described me once as looking like a child that was about to be in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember seeing you and you would never look me in the eye.
Right.
You were just like, yeah.
It's true. So what's really cool, and we talked about this earlier, is that some of the mistakes we made in our previous relationships, we were able to look at and go, okay, don't want to do that again.
Right.
And even though things have been messy and it was really tough, and we're by far still working on things with each other. I mean, just yesterday we got really snarky with each other,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, we did.
I mean, it's going to happen. So, we're not sitting here going, oh, it's all rainbows and butterflies.
No. And the thing is, I think the difference is in our current relationship is that we've figured out what we don't want. And so I think with us, we have such an open communication between us and such an open trust and honesty
Mm-hmm.
that I would never want to jeopardize that in any way. It's worth protecting.
Right. And it's safe to show a weakness.
Right. I guess that's what I meant. Exactly. And so when these things come up like they did for both of us yesterday, taking that moment to honestly hear each other and speak it, even if it's uncomfortable, or especially when it's uncomfortable, because the relationship deserves that attention.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so, I mean, the comparison of and the way it used to be for me,
Mm-hmm.
and the way it is now is just really like black and white. It just has been a breath of fresh air to relax and be myself.
Me too.
Whether it's a happy self or
a snarky self.
Or a snarky self or
Yeah.
a scared self or, a doubting self, all the emotions that come with, growing. Because one thing I think you and I have in common is we really want to keep pushing the limits.
Right.
Individually and together.
Right. And that's something you definitely do for me, is you always encourage me to push and to reach further and further. You don't let me cool my jets for too long without the support. You know when I need the push, I guess is what I'm saying.
The other thing that we do, I think, with supporting each other is there are times to just back off and give someone space.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you say, and I mean, if shifting to you, wouldn't you say that one of her favorite sayings is, I need a minute?
Yeah.
She doesn't literally mean 60 seconds.
No, I do not.
What does that mean, I need a minute?
It means you might want to step back. You might get hurt.
It's true.
We joke, but yeah.
No, and I think all the joking aside, giving each other the space to deal with something that's really upsetting or that really is got us in its grip.
Yeah.
Is, I think, one way that at least I feel both, but I'm talking about you right now, in terms of supporting you and giving you the space to work through something, not like, well, what do you need? You want to talk about it now?
Yeah, well,
tell me how you're feeling.
That makes me think, I remember when we first got together.
Okay.
That's something that you used to do, is you would just so eager to help. And if you remember, I told you, sometimes all I need is to be heard. I don't need you to fix it.
Right.
Because your sweet intentions, trying to fix it, how can I make this better? You can't. You can't.
You mean I can't fix you?
No.
Are you unfixable?
Many have tried.
Like they say in the South, I'm fixing to help you.
Thing is, sometimes you can, but sometimes the best fix that I can have is to just sit with something for a while. And after I've kind of processed it through my body, because that's the way I process things, is I kind of let it shake through. And it's a thing I do. But once I've processed it, then I'm ready to talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, is what I'm trying to say, is that you've kind of figured me out. You know when to step forward and when to step back and give me that space. And I think I do the same with you.
Yeah, I don't think you needed quite the learning curve that I needed at first.
It wasn't bad. It was super sweet, but you can't. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So that's interesting, and I had forgotten about that, I guess. And it's all about, I think it's getting to know each other, listening to each other, or paying attention to the cues.
Yeah.
And sometimes I miss them. I miss them. I'm a guy.
Yeah.
Can you tell by the look on my resting bitch face that you should step away? So.
Right? Do you hear me now?
I'm getting louder.
Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, I do.
No, but it's a give and take, and I think it's about, when I was talking a little bit about your past and my past, how different they are. Well, it's about helping each other work through that, so that we can break through our whatever limits. Because I think the biggest challenge we have isn't necessarily each other; it's our own selves.
Isn't that always the truth? It's always the way. Yeah.
Shooting ourselves in the foot, blocking things, or
getting in our own path. Yeah.
Or doubting, or and it isn't always the other person's job to rush in and fix it.
It rarely is.
Right.
In fact, I would even I would even underscore that. Yeah, it rarely is. But to have the support, that's a different story, right?
Right. Right. Support without codependency.
There's a whole episode in itself, right?
Like the 18-hour bra, support can be beautiful.
Yeah.
That goes back a long ways.
Yeah, it does.
Wasn't it 18? Was it 18 hours or was it 24?
Was 18.
18. That's a long time to wear
That's
a bra.
long time to wear one.
Not that I've ever worn one. However.
I don't care which one you're wearing. 18 hours is too much.
Yes. However, that kind of support can be beautiful.
Mm-hmm. You can.
So I think we wanted to share this because I think this last week we were kind of going through our own version of that.
Yeah. Definitely. I think, as things there's just been, we've all been through it. There's been so much change in the past few months. This year, there's been a lot of change. And things are bound to come up.
Right. Well, they're always going to come up.
Yeah, but it just seems like it's
accelerated.
It's on steroids right now.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. Just a lot more is coming up, and it seems like it's coming from the depths for a lot of people, us included.
Right. And I think being supportive to each other, whether it's in a relationship like us or friends, or being understanding and listening to each other, is much more what's called for than you don't agree with me, and you're this and you're that, all the finger pointing.
Yeah, and it's not about, I think we got into this conversation too about it's not about convincing or getting somebody. I think that's the rut people get into, is trying to get you to agree with me, to change your mind about how you see things, right? No, it's just about hearing each other and offering support even when you disagree.
Right. So, and agree to disagree, agree to disagree. I can't speak right now. But agreeing to disagree, I think, is sometimes where you have to land with people.
Yeah. But truly hearing each other at the same time, as I interrupt you.
Yes. I was going to say
ironic.
A level of respect, unlike what you just did.
That's funny. Sorry.
No, and life is messy. A relationship is messy. There's no easy way to get out of it unscathed.
Yeah.
So
I gotta tell you though, I don't think I've ever had a relationship where I felt like I was on such even ground with somebody. Heard and respected both. So thank you.
You're welcome. Well, that would make me even Steven. Right?
Yeah.
No, you're welcome. And it's a continual challenge. It's not a smooth ride, but I can't think of a better person
Thank you.
to go on that
Me too.
ride, even when there's turbulence.
Right? Well, yeah, to grab your hand and just jump.
Yeah, hopefully with a parachute too.
Yeah.
Who packed your chute, right? To end this segment, I just wanted to, we saw this quote, and I think it's a really good summing up what we're talking about. A true relationship is someone who accepts your past, supports your present, loves you, and your future.
I love that.
And yeah, I can't say it better than that.
Yeah, that about says it all.
It really does. And I feel lucky. I think we're lucky.
I do too.
We are a soaring pair as we bump wrists together for you, those of you on the podcast. So, another Sandyism, of course.
Okay.
So, we've shared quite a few, but I kind of like this one, and I'm pretty sure I haven't shared this, although you may have said this, but I don't think I've shared this in my Sandyism segment.
Okay.
And this is it. Getting jiggy with it. What does that mean? Getting jiggy with it. I got to throw you for that one, didn't I?
You did.
How do you get jiggy with it?
That's funny. Okay. Well, it's when you're really getting into it. You know.
Like
Getting jiggy with it.
like you're all in.
Exactly. You're all in.
All right. Well, that's good. We're
Yeah.
getting jiggy
We're
with it.
in. Yes, we are.
We are so jiggy. We are jiggy and giggly. But you know, it's how we roll. It's how Soren Pair rolls, you know.
Mhm.
It really is. So we again want to thank you for hanging with us
Yes.
this episode, and we want to remind you that you can see our faces on YouTube and hear our voices on all our podcast platforms like iTunes, Google, Spotify, Stitcher, Radio Public, Overcast, Castbox, and Podcast app.
Yep.
So, and a quick moment of apology. Last week we changed the microphone
That's
and
right.
could not hear Sandy, and so we tested it and we believe it's in a much better place.
I hope it worked today. I believe it did. The microphone is closer without being in my ear here. So yeah, hopefully that worked.
And one last update we forgot.
Mm.
Our garden of little
Oh.
flowers.
Yes, yes, it makes me so happy.
Yes.
We've got all kinds of colors.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
We planted them like 2 months ago.
Yeah, it took a while. It took longer than I thought it would.
So look on our Soren Pair Facebook page to see some of those.
Yep.
And reach out to us. Keep giving us comments. We really appreciate the feedback
Yes.
as we continue to take you on this journey with us.
Yes. Have a great week, everybody. Good to see you, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.
Bye.